Hello, fellow TV lovers, I'm Matthew, and this is The Worst, a show where we dissect your favorite TV show's worst characters. Today we're talking about the most over-the-top, worst resident of the Arconia, Oliver Putnam. If you haven't seen Only Murders in the Building on Hulu, I highly recommend it. Go watch it right now, and then come back here and watch this. Okay? The show is a mystery comedy that follows three strangers who are brought together by their shared love of a true crime podcast. But when a real murder takes place in their own building, they decide to start their own podcast to document their evidence as they try to figure out who the killer was. You learn to love the hosts of Only Murders in the Building, the pessimistic former TV star Charles Hayden Savage, Brazos, the secretive apartment renovator Mabel Mora, Alex Russo, but one host continuously gets on our nerves, and that is the struggling Broadway director, Oliver Putnam. Since we're talking about Only Murders in the Building, I feel like it's only appropriate for me to be drinking gut milk, which is what Oliver and Charles were coerced into buying in exchange for information to move them forward in their investigation.
Gut milk is really good.
Right? I think it's giving me abs.
13% alcohol.
Now let's get into why Oliver is the worst. Oliver means well, but he's always steamrolling over everybody else. He's a long-winded individual, and I just it's big red X for me. He always thinks his ideas are better than Charles and Mabel's. When they're trying to record their podcast, Oliver's always interrupting Charles and critiquing Charles's writing and performances.
Tim Kono was murdered by someone in this building, which means...
Okay, I'm sorry, cut.
What's the matter?
You are scoring a murder mystery, not DJing a hobbit's wedding.
The concertina can be very haunting. It transports.
Yeah, well, it transports me back to 1800s Ireland. I feel like I'm in the middle of the potato famine.
You know, you'd think he would trust his co-host's capabilities, seeing as he hosted a TV show for so long, but, Oliver is such a perfectionist that when he interviews people that are witnesses, he makes them redo their statement over and over again if he's not happy with it.
We're gonna cut. I like the emotion. Keep that. I kind of need you to enunciate better.
He's the worst. He is financially irresponsible. Oliver is totally irresponsible with his money. Being hopelessly enthralled with theater, he has invested a lot of his money into a lot of flops. A lot of Broadway flops, a lot of investment opportunities that went awry. Lest we not forget Splash the Musical, that was a fail. When he was working on putting the show together, he ended up going $4 million over budget. $4 million over budget, can you imagine? That's not going over budget, that's called going nuts. The show was a disaster and Oliver was basically left bankrupt. And toward the end of the show, I think he was almost evicted. Or he was evicted or he was almost evicted. He had that paper on his door and that's just not a good sign. He's always going to his son for money and it's just boy, you don't stop. He is financially irresponsible and that's why he is the worst. He is overly dramatic. Coming from someone who's overly dramatic. Maybe this is why I hate him, because we have a lot in common. Being a Broadway producer, you'd expect for him to be over the top, but he's just over the top and then some.
Really? Do you not see this coat?
He makes every small inconvenience a big inconvenience. And it's a liability at that point, because when they walked into Tim Kono's apartment and saw that there was blood everywhere, he started screaming, "There's blood everywhere! There's blood everywhere!"
Luminol and a black light in case we find...
Blood! There's blood!
Don't yell blood!
Is it his blood? Is it my blood? Are my feet bleeding through my shoes?
Do you want to be framed for this murder? No. Fly. Oliver is so over the top and draws so much attention to himself, and that's why he's the worst. My overall opinion of Only Murders in the Building is it's an amazing show. I think you can watch it with your family, which I think is super important. I give Only Murders in the Building a 10 out of 10. I think it's an amazing show. I think that it has longevity. It's funny. It's also serious. It's a New York City-based show. When shows are filmed and take place in New York, there is a big difference than a show that takes place in New York but films in LA. And when a show takes place in New York and films in New York, that means they have on a scale of hints of jerk to the absolute worst, Oliver Putnam is an overdramatic boomer. To recap, Oliver steamrolls over everyone. He is financially irresponsible, who isn't though? And he is overly dramatic, who isn't though? Thank you for watching The Worst. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and turn on post notifications. And don't forget that Oliver Putnam is the worst.